was huge for me. That just allows us to have really close and deep relationships with all of the different faculty members. And I would say this really furthers and deepens my learning because any question I have, they always keep their doors open, or you can go up to them in between classes and ask them anything. They'll take you through any question you have, try and teach it from another angle if needed, or just really everyone's here for you. And that close knit community is something that was really important to me, and WASM, met that on all levels, and it's been incredible so far.
It's terrific. Again, it fosters a very fruitful learning environment for everyone. I mean, medical school by design is challenging because it has to be. It's something that we all are aware of, but to have it in an environment where you're comfortable, you have access to readily accessible faculty members, etc., is quite remarkable. Our students often tell us, in addition to the small class size, why they joined WASM. Individual attention, also the location being basically 20 to 30-minute flight from Florida, and just overall support the program has to offer. And it's nice to hear your sentiments as far as the fact that you are having that experience. So that's wonderful. Let's move toward the discussion about our curriculum. Dr. Coleman, can you please explain our flipped classroom environment and how it prepares students for clerkships and licensing examinations?
Sure. So many of our sessions, not all of them, but a lot of our sessions are what's called the flipped classroom. And this is really an approach to invoke more active learning. Kind of slightly different things, but there's a lot of overlap there. And so with the flipped classroom model, we actually have a lot of pre-session materials and just work that is allowed to get you up to speed before you come into the actual session that we're having for the day. So how do we do that? Well, one thing, we have a lot of what we call white space, but just a lot of time for independent study that's built into the curriculum. So we maximize to where there's only about 20 hours a week or so for these students are actually in the classroom or in a PCC, a clinical setting. And so that gives that there's always a lot of time for the students to take advantage of so that they can get through the material before they come into the session. And that way, when they come in, we don't have to start with the basics, the fundamentals, but we can actually elevate it right away into a more clinical scenario. So we can then have some multiple choice questions that go through some clinical scenarios, and then we can answer it, see who knows the answers, and then we can have a discussion that follows up to fine tune that knowledge on that information. And instead of having to go through all these nitty gritty details, the students are supposed to come in mostly prepared with the basics of that. And then, like I said, we get to elevate it so that what we're discussing in class is medicine, right? Not just the basics of hoping to get to the medicine someday. And I will say that one of the things in anatomy, we do a little bit more of a active didactic style, where there will be a little bit more of lecturing per se, but then we do a lot of palpation experiments. We work with the models a lot. And so I'm really big about when I'm talking about a gland or a ligament or a muscle or whatever, I like to have the students to physically feel those out, find the landmarks, find it, so that when they go into their physician-centered care applications, then they can actually, or patient-centered care applications, they can actually know where it is they're supposed to be auscultating, if they want to know the mitral valve, or if they want to, be able to palpate the pulmonary, or hear the pulmonary trunk, or the upper superior lobe of the right lung. So we definitely have a little bit more of that as well, but definitely active all the time and mostly flipped environments.
And the active learning model also reduces lecture fatigue in classrooms, where as students, it can be draining sitting in a classroom for a few hours where all you're hearing is the lecture material, and being able to do active learning really lends for a richer learning experience. You also touch base on another interesting component where students have time during the day to actually meet with their classmates, meet with the faculty and to review the material, so that any issues of misunderstanding or not grasping the material can be worked out, whether it's in a small group setting or individually. And so I think that is also another difference that we have versus other medical schools. Celia and Randall, as most undergraduate, graduate, and even other medical schools tend to have the traditional learning structure that includes an emphasis solely on lectures, sort of continues the discussion of what we have. Could you tell us about your experience with the curriculum and how it's contributed to your success?
Yeah, so undergraduate and even studying for the MCAT was a lot less active learning, and you were just more there just to learn, take your test, and go home. Whereas come here and such, it's a lot different with that active learning. Not only we're not just stuck in class from 8 to 5 p.m. every day. We have that window to be able to communicate with the faculty and other students, and we have that time to be able to fill in our own learning gaps instead, and that we don't get that fatigue by just being in a lecture all day. And we have that active learning, which kind of keeps us more alert, and we're working in small groups with other little groups with other students, to where we can kind of bounce ideas off them, to where we can kind of help answer questions together. As you're not there alone. You're not just by yourself. You have other people that can help you. Unlike in undergraduate and such, where it's a little less like that. You have to, if you don't know somebody, then you're kind of on your own. It's depending on your personality type too.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Celia, what about you? Share with us.
So I would say one of the big things for me is by learning, all the stuff that you could read in a textbook on your own before you get to class. That allows our time in class to not be focused on, those little details that we can all learn on our own, but really to dig deeper into the bigger picture and to connect things. So whether that means we have an anatomist, a pharmacologist, and someone teaching us about the different diseases all in the same room with us to go over questions that integrate it all together, or just to connect all these topics that kind of seem, hard to put together when they're on their own. But once you have all of them together, it all makes sense. So that's, a great aspect of the flipped classroom, in my opinion.
That's great. That's wonderful. Dr. Coleman, behind you, we see our simulation lab. Could you discuss how the simulation lab is incorporated into the curriculum?
Sure. Well, this is one of 4 simulation labs we have right here. We've got 3 more in the suites next to us. And each one of these has a high fidelity wireless patient that we use, a patient simulator. It's an adult patient simulator. And these are complete state-of-the-art. Basically, they can do everything but walk. And they just have full, it's every single system that we investigate, you can do tests on, they can code, they can go through all type of medical conditions. You can draw blood, they can bleed, they can have a diaphragm paralysis. It's a lot of really complicated things. You can amputate, simulate amputation. And so these are some really just amazing models we have here. We have the Apollos over here. We have 2 Aries on and down the other room. And then in another room over here, we have the Harvey simulator, which is a total cardio. And I was just looking through everything that you can test on the Harvey, and it is truly a massive amount of just different medical conditions, clinical cardiac conditions that you can do. You can see a video here with some of our students which are using these. And so they're intubating, they're doing everything that you would do for a real patient before you actually have to do it on a live person. And so CPR, it's just truly an impressive digital device. And like I said, completely wireless, and everything from the eyes, the dilate, they have a lot of, in this AI age, it's you where I'm fascinated all the time, but these things were kind of the predecessors to the AI. And I imagine that once that gets blended in, there'll be even more. There's our Harvey unit, and that's the mat right there, yeah. But just some really impressive state-of-the-art equipment that we use before you go and start actually working with some of our standardized patients.
And it's nice because you get to experience certain medical situations that you would not want to have your first experience with a real person. So it's a wonderful, from an experiential standpoint, it really does lend continuing to the active learning process. It's not just theoretical. You're actually getting into these real life life experiences, and it develops muscle memory. It develops a familiarity that when down the road you are in these situations, it actually does, you will have recall as well potentially. So Celia and Randall, from a student's perspective, what do you like most about the coursework as it relates to the simulation lab?
Yeah, for the sim, it definitely incorporates everything from lecture that we've been learning throughout every unit, and it helps us kind of work. We're not by ourselves out in there. We go in as a team, and so it helps kind of strengthen that kind of team bonding and be able to work with others from different backgrounds and such, and different knowledge bases. And they might be able to add something that you weren't thinking of at that time, and you could be able to treat a patient accordingly. And obviously, these are not real patients, so which makes it where it's not as high stakes, but it's still a high fidelity situation that you want to be able to put yourself into, and as if it is a real patient, as if you would treat them in that way too. So that incorporation with our lecture material and the actual application of it really helps solidify those learning objectives, and helps us kind of know exactly where we're going with what we need to know.
And it keeps you on point. It keeps you on track as well, which I think is terrific. Celia, what about you? What's been your experience with this?
Yes, so from our very first unit here at WASM, we have a sim lab, and each unit will have a case that's specific to what you're learning. So if you're learning about the heart, then it's going to be some sort of case related to that, etc. And when you're going in with that team, you're getting to have that hands-on application of what you were doing in the classroom, but in a setting that feels extremely realistic. And everyone kind of comes in with a role. There'll be a team leader for the group. And everything that you're doing on the patient, you're getting real feedback. So if you're supposed to be hearing a certain sound in their lungs, that might clue you into what medication to give. We actually give the medication through the IV. Sometimes that will help, sometimes that won't. And then you have to, think on your feet and move on and try and get to the, final part of the case where the patient starts to feel better. And you're getting that feedback as you go, and you're working with probably 5 to 6 other students. So it's a really great way to kind of tie everything together.
It's terrific because we have audio, visual, and kinesthetic learning styles. We all have that, and with the theoretical framework, the anatomy behind it, and then the actual hands-on application, it incorporates the 3 learning styles to really help to enhance the learning experience, and I think that's terrific. Dr. Coleman, can you also talk about the learning resources provided to all WASM students?
Sure. I think one of the special things that we have here is that we provide AMBOSS, the AMBOSS library, free of charge to all of our students in the first 5 semesters. And AMBOSS is basically considered the gold standard for evaluating whether you're prepared to tackle the step. And so that's something that we've rolled out early on, and when we opened up, and the students just really love it. I know in other places I've worked that students had to purchase all of these resources on their own, and therefore some of them just didn't have the opportunity to work with those. But we do have the big AMBOSS library. It's got just so many questions, and you can really rate the questions on hammers. So as a 1 hammer is an easy question, 5 hammer is you've got to be really on your game to answer one of these questions. But so it lets you stage your preparation. You can start off with 1s, and then when you're ready, you can move on up into 2s and 3s. We also, in the clerkship phase, once you get into St. Anthony's in Chicago, and then some other sites that we'll be having for clerkship phase, in other words, semesters 6 through 10, we have our UWorld, which is another big database that it's a great resource that a lot of students really like. So, and most of the students like to diversify, and they'll get burned on one, so they'll have 2 or 3 of these major question databases that they're constantly going through. The students learn here quickly. It's about questions. You have the questions identify where your weaknesses are at, and they let you know when you've mastered the concepts. And so part of that too is we have Complete Anatomy, which is a 3D, really powerful tool that allows you to do virtual dissections. It allows you to strip through the skin and all the fascia and the adipose tissue and get down to the structures you're looking for with just a click of a mouse, as opposed to spending 2 hours in a stinky anatomy lab getting your clothes all disgusting, which is amazing, but it's also a big time suck. It takes a lot of time to do that, and it's also can be challenging for some students. So we see some examples here of just the real power of that our students have access to that. We have the Access Medicine Resource Library, which is a comprehensive library that comes from McGraw-Hill. And we also have the LWW Library, the Lippincott, Williams, and Wilkins Library. And those are both available in our digital library, where it has multiple sources on, in my realm, anatomy, embryology, histology, neuroanatomy, just multiple texts, atlases, and everything. And that's true for all of the disciplines. There's multiple sources. So if a student really wants to dig a little bit deeper, maybe they're looking at going down a certain specialty, or they're just really interested in something that's kind of wasn't quite covered in the depth that they want to do, just from their curiosity. We have a lot of digital resources available for them. But I really, like I say, the AMBOSS is, I think, one of our most popular offerings for the students, and I think they thrive on that.
Interesting. I remember during my undergraduate and during gross anatomy, reflecting on that versus what we have here, I probably would have preferred, not just because of the aroma, as you pointed out, but just the experience of being able to have a three-dimensional view of the dissection. It does lend to a deeper understanding as well. So thank you for that.
If you mess up, it's easy to fix. It's just unclick, undo, and you can go back and re-dissect it again. So,
and there are not many situations where you're able to do that in life. So that's a definite plus. Absolutely. Celia and Randall, I know learning resources vary among students depending upon the learning style. We touched base on that for a brief moment. But what is one of your go-to learning resources?
Now, one of my big ones that I always go to is actually Med School Boot Camp is a big one that I go to. They have their own set of questions on top of the ones that we can use from AMBOSS too, to help solidify our knowledge and just a different way of asking something. Plus, they have little videos that you can go through to kind of help with those quick clinical topics, and a little quick bites right after to kind of help solidify it, to make sure you kind of understand what you just watched. And then you can go on to the deeper questions to be able to read through a clinical vignette and answer a question.
And for me, I really like AMBOSS that Dr. Coleman was touching on. One of the things I really like about it is that once you're done doing a bunch of questions, it'll give you an in-depth, paragraph, 2 paragraphs, exactly why each answer is wrong, and then also why your answer is right. And this really helps you to, you could do the questions 5 times and still get something out of it. Because if you're doing the question and you go through all of these other answers and you think about what those answers would be getting at, then you're basically getting 5-6 questions in one. And they also link you to all these different articles and other sets of questions based on what they think that you should work on. So you get really great feedback, and it targets your learning in a way that's just done for you. You don't have to spend any time figuring out what to study. It basically tells you what you should work on. So it's really great.
That's terrific. The learning resources is only half of the issue. The other half of the issue would be student support. And I'd like to turn our attention to that for a brief moment. Dr. Coleman, as one of the founding faculty members, could you talk about what students can expect, in terms of things that are built for student success? For example, talk about the type of support services available to our students, for example, CAS, faculty support, student affairs, wellness, campus life, career advising, etc.
Sure. So we have the CAS, which is the Center for Academic Success, and that's spearheaded by Dr. Zellner. And this is I've encountered some similar programs or departments before, but nothing that is so really rich and enriching, I think, for the students. So we have, especially early in your first couple of semesters, there's a lot of weekly CAS sessions, and it'll be focused on just topics of, managing stress, or dealing, how to answer a question, or how to dissect a vignette, or learning strategies. And so Dr. Zellner has a whole suite of different applications set up that are made to really help the students fine-tune their study skills, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then just maximize their success. I mean, the name says it all, but it really is. She strives to do that. So there's a lot of scheduled things, but we also have these specialized CAS sessions called just-in-time sessions. And so those are nice because I can be working with a group of students and I know there's an exam coming up and I'm talking to some of them. I'm like, they're still not getting the palsies of the brachial plexus on the detail that I really need them to, or I'd like to be at. So I'll schedule a just-in-time session through the CAS, and then we can have a little 2-hour session where we go through some questions, we work on some concepts, we clean up the details, and then sometimes I can keep the students from going down some rabbit holes that maybe aren't as productive or fruitful. And so I think that, like I said, it's again something that's more amplified than at any place that I've worked at before. We also have a counseling and wellness center, and Melanie Jezel is our counselor, and so she's right here on campus, and she offers a lot of support for students, whether it's school related or could be outside of school, but it's just affecting your ability to focus or just your mental happiness. And so that's really nice. I think a lot of students get to take advantage of that. And if you're feeling stressed, you can go down to her office and you can cut out a little snowflake. You can do some stress relief type activities and things like that. We don't see any snow around here. That's kind of a novelty. Snowflakes. As was mentioned earlier, most of the faculty, if not all, have an open door policy. And so I have a cracked door policy, which means I'm there, come on in. I'm just shut the door because I might be listening to music or in VR or something like that. But a lot of times say, can I schedule an appointment? I said, we can schedule it or just come on by. And if I'm not in session, if I'm not actually actively teaching, then I'll be in my office waiting for students to come around. And some days I'll have a few hours in the afternoon. I could go out on my sailboat, but I'll stay here instead and just wait. And sure enough, I have 2 or 3 students come by, and the next thing you know, we're drawing on the board and we're working out some ideas. And so I think that's really good. The Office of Student Affairs actually has a really rich, dynamic group of activities that they have. For one thing, they sponsor our student clubs, and we have 19 student clubs right now, several more in the works. And so it's just a wide diversity. If a student group wants to open up a club, there's a process that they can go through. They write up, some information. They get a faculty sponsor, and then it gets voted on. And so far, we've had a lot of success with the students. Really, and the advantage of these clubs is that they help. They're CV builders, right? So they actually add a lot of things to your CV, which will make you competitive and hopefully give you a chance to stand out from not only other IMGs or international medical graduates, but also with stateside students. Students are graduating stateside. And so one thing is that, well, I was the president of this club, and I was an officer in this club, and I helped found this club. And so that's all a really amazing thing. The OSA also sponsors at least 1 or 2, but sometimes 3 major events every single semester. So in the first week, we have Welcome Week, or right after Welcome Week, our first week of classes, we have a big game night. And so there's a balloon house, a bouncy house on campus, and there's all kinds of activities going on. And I'm always going around, and playing Anatomy Jeopardy or whatever, with students. Make sure our fun is focused still. But also a soiree that we've been doing for about the last year. And so at the end of the semester, we have a big gala, and everybody gets all dressed up in fancy clothes, and then there's just dancing and food and music, and everybody likes to kind of end the semester that way. We often, OSA sponsors a beach cleanup, and we've got one coming up here in about a week and a half or so. And so I actually put a request in to come down to Xanadu Beach, which is close to where I live. I think so that's what we're going to probably take the beach cleanup down there. And then also white coat ceremony. So we have we now have white coat once a year, and so OSA also sponsors that. So a lot of different things going on, and lots of ways that we try to, during the day we want the students to work as hard as they can, and to and also into the evenings. But we want to realize that there is life outside of the study for medical school.
Even the way the daily lecture material is done, in terms of having the breaks during the day, there's allows for a bit more of a life balance, and as opposed to having the lectures all day and then going back home and having dinner and then being up until 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So that will still happen, but it allows for a less stressful day, so to speak, which I think is important.
And it allows us to put the ball further. It allows the students to make it further in their understanding.
And studies have shown that higher level of academic stress reduces the retention level, it reduces, the recall, et cetera. So that I think that plus the services and the environment that you've described, it's a wonderful environment. So Celia and Randall, we often hear that students might be really, really good in their undergraduate courses, but that academic success doesn't always translate into standardized tests, such as the MCAT, for example. Could you talk about the resources available to improve students' quote unquote test taking skills and performance on exams?
Yeah, for sure. Not only do we have the CAS available that we can go to help us kind of fine tune on how we kind of look at a question, be able to answer it the best we can, and be able to come up with that answer and why we came up with that answer and why we didn't choose the other ones. But we also have other faculty that we can go to. We can go to any one of our faculty and say we have this question, and they can help walk us through it and why it is the answer it is and how we can come to that answer. Or we can go to even fellow students will even help us too in other semesters above us that have already gone through all that and they know how these questions look, they know what to look for. You can go to them and they'll more than happy to help you. It's pretty open for the most part for everybody. Nobody's gonna push you away. They're pretty open as far as all that goes.
PLP, we call them peer learning partners. So
Right.
upperclassmen helping the underclassmen.
That's great.
Yes.
Celia?
A few things about that. So the PLPs are great because at WASM, since we're semester by semester, the students above you were taking your unit just a few months ago, not like a whole year ago. So what's great about that is it's pretty fresh and they're really good at, connecting on that material and making sure you can see it from all these different points of view. And I think that's a great aspect. And then I would also say that the open door policy, in combination with how small the school is, if you're just, on campus and you're going through a problem and you come up with a question, you can just walk through the hall of all the teachers with all their doors open and pop in and have your question answered. And you really don't have to think ahead and schedule it for the next day or whenever their office hours would be. You can do it in that moment, so that you're not going down this rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, how do I get to this answer? You can just get it figured out right then and there. And I think that allows us to be more focused, more productive, and further our understanding of all the material.
That's terrific. Looking at your history, for example, Celia, you're a second semester student, Randall, your third semester. Now that you've had a couple, 1 and 2 semesters under your belt, respectively, Randall, could you share with us what was the biggest adjustment for you? And then we'll ask Celia to do the same. The biggest adjustment for you, and how did you overcome it when you came into medical school?
Yeah, so definitely not only just coming to new school, but in a whole new island in a different country than what you're used to, but also adjusting to that, but also adjusting to the different testing style that they perform with those NBME style questions. Be able to nitpick out those instead of having a question that was written by the professor themselves based exactly on their material, which you can just study through and be like, oh, I got it all. You have to actually be able to apply all of that information from a culmination of everything you were learning throughout the entire semester. So learning that, it's basically going through to a new learning style to be able to understand and apply all the information that you were kind of going through. Unlike going through like undergrad and stuff like that, it was a lot different than that. So that's kind of just making that adjustment into that whole new learning style to be able to answer those questions and reason why you came up with that answer.
Yeah, and to add on to that, in undergrad, you might take biology, take the test, and then move on. You don't have to really remember that material necessarily because next class it's chemistry and you're moving on. But in medical school, everything that you learn builds on it, and it's going to come back because you have to take a step, and all of that's all those questions are fair game. So part of that integration of all these topics is a big adjustment. But I think the fact that we get NBME questions from day one really helps with that because you're getting this constant reminder of how you'll be asked about these topics. And we have access to all these question banks too. So you can just select, one of those older concepts to make sure you're kind of staying fresh with that material. And that has really allowed me to adjust to all this information overload and kind of like separate it all out in my head.
Individuals have actually referenced the amount of material in medical school as learning how to drink water from a fire hose, basically. And it sounds like, there you go.
Two fire hoses.
Yeah, there you go. And this style really lends to to coming in and lessens the shock, I guess, if you will. And so that's terrific. I wanted just to add one thing, just to shift gears for a brief moment. Some students have recently asked me as far as are we still accepting applications for the upcoming term? The short answer is yes. We're accepting applications for May and September. So you can visit our website at wasm.education to complete our online application. There's no application fee. And so, just wanted to touch base on that briefly, and we'll repeat that for those individuals who might be joining us a little bit later. So let's talk about Freeport, life on Freeport. So Dr. Coleman, what can individuals expect when coming to Grand Bahamas, and what is the campus environment like for the students?
So there's palm trees and coconuts and conch shells, and it's all the stuff you'd expect. I will say, I'm kind of joking a little bit, but it's a beautiful environment. Freeport, which is on Grand Bahama, is the second largest city in the Bahamas, and it's just right. It's not too big, it's not too small, and so it's the Goldilocks, kind of era in it. We have, hardware stores and big grocery stores, not exactly like the States, but fairly similar. And then we have fast food restaurants. We've got Wendy's and Burger King and Domino's, or I had Marco's Pizza. I had a calzone from Marco's for lunch. But there's kind of this. It's not quite as crazy and active as you might get in a big city in the States. So that can be really distracting. And so, here it's in Freeport, everything is 15 minutes away. So you can literally be on one side of Freeport and need to get to the other side, and it'll be less than 15 minutes. And so that's nice. I will say that, there are some things, it does help to have a car when you're here. Some students, we have a few students who ride bicycles. We've got a little army of moped riders too. And it's nice because, it's really, there's a lot of sunshine here, and they say 300 days a year of sunshine. That's been what I've experienced my 2+ years here. But it does rain, and when it rains pretty hard. And so it's nice to have a car when you have to get through the mud puddles and go to the grocery store and everything else. So, like I said, there's some American food, but there's also a lot of local Bahamian cuisine as well. I'm a huge fan of conch chowder. And I know a couple of places that have a really mean conch chowder, but just a lot of the seafood type things that you would expect. There's a lot of great restaurants where you can get fresh fish. A lot of local fishers supporting those restaurants as well. As was mentioned earlier, right? It's only a 27-minute flight over to the States, and there's not a ton of airlines that fly, but there's Bahamas Air, there's American Airlines, and a couple of smaller ones. But pretty much, you can get across, and it's funny because the plane never gets more than like 8,000 feet tall, high. I mean, there's no dinging of the bells or nothing. It's like, just sit down, put your seatbelt on, we'll be on the ground in a minute. And so it really makes it easy to get back and forth. And I know a lot of students and sometimes the faculty, we might just take a weekend and go to Fort Lauderdale. We want things like tacos and Walmart. But which we don't have either one of those on the island. No good Mexican food, but it's easy to get over and get away. But I love it because you can have a hard day, either working hard or just life is stressing you out, and you go down to the beach and you watch the sunset, and I do this every evening with my dog, and I just have a peace and serenity that I haven't been able to find it after work anywhere else that I've been before. And so, the thing about the beaches is they're just not that crowded, and they're not that commercialized like you would see in Florida. So there's not 1,000 beach toys and 1,000 people and all this money grabbing, kind of paying stuff. It's a lot of local Bahamians, some students, and an extremely, extremely friendly culture. I really mean that. I every day I walk and everybody just comes out and they're just hi, and someone can know your name. They all know my dog's name, and so I personally have fallen in love with Freeport. And the thing I love about the university coming here is that we are actually helping support the revitalization of Freeport after Hurricane Dorian hit, and so that was a pretty big. In 2019 was a pretty big impact. But the island is really bouncing back, and we've been a great intellectual and financial stimulus for the island. I think that's great, and like I say, that the Bohemians are welcoming us, and they treat our students really great, and so I've got nothing but positive stuff to say about Freeport, and I'm happy. I'm very happy to live here.
It sounds like a tremendous environment to be able to focus in medical school. Plus, as far as accessibility, for families to be able to come down and visit as well. It's the closest Caribbean medical school to the U.S., so it makes it very convenient for that as well. Celia and Randall, can you talk about your experience in Freeport? Yeah, Celia.
Yeah, so Freeport really is the perfect place to, be doing medical school. It's not too slow, but it's also not too busy at all. There's plenty of food, restaurants, things to do. Like Mondays, I play pickleball. Fridays, I play beach volleyball. That's a good, hour and a half, 2 hour break to be out in the sun, getting some exercise, hanging out with other students. Sometimes some local people will come by too. That's really great crossover. And then anytime you're just stressed or need a little break from studying, the beaches are right there. It's a perfect place to decompress, just kind of be in nature. And yeah, you're really not too distracted either. So there's plenty of time and reason to focus because there's not all this stuff going on that you feel like you're missing out on or could be doing. So it's great.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of branching off of all that. Yeah, the beaches are definitely a wonderful place to go and relax, but you can also go and study there too. You can pop up a chair and just sit in the sun and do some studying for a little bit, just to find that way of kind of just decompressing too, and going to a lot of the local restaurants and such too. And I find that pretty much all the locals that I've met, they're very nice people. They're really kind. Mostly all of them are aware of the medical school, so they know about it, and so you can have an open conversation with almost anyone here and kind of just travel around too, and just so you're not just stuck inside of just like a little cubicle studying. You can go outside. It's there.
Nice.
I want to add one last thing too. I forgot to mention that on campus we have a student lounge that's just not too far back behind our SIM building, and we have a pool table, two foosball tables, a ping pong table, some TVs, a kitchen for the students. There's like 6 microwaves, that type of stuff, some refrigerators. So we've got that great leisure space for the students, and I'll see them on lunch, and they're playing pool and they're working on. I think they're working on physics, right? So they can understand eyeball mechanics.
Yeah.
But whatever they're doing. And I do want to mention that we also have some delivery on some food delivery. So there's DeGregory's is a restaurant that comes by every day during lunchtime, and you just place your order, by a certain time, and we have several other services which do deliveries to campus. So if you really just want to stay here and keep at it, then we've got some time for you to play a quick game of ping pong, eat a nice Caesar salad, and then you're back in either session or back to the books.
That's great. Again, it's all about balance. It's all about hitting both sides of the student experience. And I think that's great. We have a few of our students that are going to be starting in May that are joining us tonight, and I was wondering if Celia and Randall, if you can share how you found housing, and what is your method of transportation on the island?
Yeah, so there's a really great housing portal that WASM has on the website. And for me, that's how I found my housing. It connects you directly to the realtor. It kind of breaks things apart based on how many bedrooms. So if you're looking for a roommate, you could look at, a multi-bedroom, or if you just want to live by yourself. So they break it up really nicely. And a lot of them have like virtual tours, or like for me, once I connected with the realtor, they responded like the next day and would go in and FaceTime you so you could get like a virtual tour. So that was really helpful. And then I do have a car to get to and from school and around the island. And that is also great too, because they'll buy your car back for 75% once you leave the island. So it's kind of an investment in the beginning, but then you get a lot of that back. So for me, that was definitely worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I went to the housing portal. I found a realtor there, and I was able to get a place. And the pricing is listed all there. They're all completely transparent with all that. They'll walk through it and everything with you virtually, and you'll be able to, and you're like, this is the one I want. They'll send you all the documents. You can sign and you're all set. For when you get on an island, you have a place to live. And the same thing with a car. A lot of people do go to the Bullseye and they kind of get their car that way. But there's also other students, because some students are leaving the island because they're done. They're moving on. A lot of them are selling their car, and you can get a pretty good deal with those too.
Great. I mean, again, it's the convenience and no, I think that's terrific. It sounds like it's a relatively easy transition. That's great. Dr. Coleman, as far as advice for prospective students, what would you give prospective students that are considering their medical school options?
I'd say to, explore several different places. Obviously you want to kind of cast a wide net, and then start to dig a little bit deeper and start asking yourself, what is it that you're looking for in a medical school? And so if you like just to be in a large group of people and there's maybe a big party scene or whatever, that's, that it may not be a school like Wasson is right for you. But if you like smaller class sizes, and that's definitely what we're about. And I personally, as a faculty member, an educator, love that I can look out into my classroom and I know every single student's name. And for me, the small class sizes really facilitates I can keep up with each and most of the students, and I have a personal relationship with them as well. I'd also say look for the resources. Does the institutions you're going for have a lot of resources available to you, or is it kind of you're on your own? And you're just going to, thousands of students have suffered through it, so can you kind of attitude. And I definitely don't believe that that's what we embody here. And then I'd say the last thing is location, right? So where's a place that you would like to spend a couple of years, or your lifetime? I was out today during lunch and talking to a realtor a retail person that owns a store, and she goes, man, I just hope that some of the doctors, they come back, because we just know so needs more good doctors here. And I said, we've got Bohemians that we're training, we've got Canadians that we're training, and majority of Americans, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the non-Bohemians decide that they want to come back to Freeport and set up a practice when they have this beautiful environment around, and especially in a place that is in need, as many places are, but Freeport really could use more great doctors, and those great doctors will help train future great doctors. So, I think that the student really needs to ask themselves, what are they looking for? Look at the schools that are available to them, and then see if Wasson is the right fit for you.
It sounds like when you were talking about being able to get to know each student individually, it's a situation where students are less likely to fall through the cracks, so to speak, because of that, the smaller class sizes and getting to know, having that personal approach. I think that's critical. Celia and Randall, you were once in the audience's shoes considering medical school options. What advice would you give prospective students about medical school?
So as far as, choosing the right one, I think if you're sitting here tonight listening to what we're saying, you've read on the website and it's really resonating with you, it's sounding like all the things that you're looking for, you really like that, group nature that we embody here, the close relationships with the students, the faculty, people above and below you, then I think you might, reflect on that and really picture yourself here, and then that would be great. Same goes to, any school that you're looking at. I think you really need to try and get as big of a picture as you can, and then do some reflection, try and put yourself in those shoes, and see if that's a place that you could see yourself in.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of just want to know what you want, and you want to do your research on the schools that you want to apply to. Understand what their mission is, what their goal is overall, and if it's something that you can believe in, that you can follow, then that's on the right track. Then those are the ones you want to go towards.
It's great, and at the end of the day, really it's a matter of what works for you, and for most people that we've spoken with, the smaller class sizes. Really, it lends to a much richer environment, which gives the students the best opportunity for success. And I think that's terrific. For those of you that have joined us, starting medical school really is obviously a major milestone to becoming a doctor. And I tell students ask me, well, should I wait? Should I wait? There's no reason if you are at a point where you know that this is what you want to do. There's no reason why you should wait. We have a class, for example, starting in May, and people have asked me what are the biggest advantages of starting, whether it's September or should I start May. Starting in May gives you wiggle room, basically, to do things like taking additional electives, which could be important if you're exploring your specialties. To take a few months time to focus solely on residency interviews afterwards, rather than juggling the need to be in an elective, needing to graduate from medical school, while at the same time you're needing to interview for residency programs. So it gives you more of a runway when you're ready to start looking into your residency. Some individuals want to take time to devote themselves to doing some research, particularly if you want to enter a competitive specialty that requires it. People might want to take some additional extra time to study for the USMLE Step 2 exam, 1 or 2 exam, for example. And if for whatever reason a student might need to take a leave of absence, it allows you to not necessarily lose what people feel losing time down the road. So with that, I want to just say that if you have any questions for us, you can email us at admissions@wasm.education. I would love and really want to thank our panel, our wonderful students. I'd like to thank Dr. Coleman as well, and everyone else that's been behind the scenes assisting in this evening. I hope it's been fruitful. It's been and informative. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Individuals that have come to spend the last hour with us. Thank you as well. Once again, we take medical school training very seriously. We take what we're charged with in providing the best opportunity for students to succeed very, very seriously. And we just wanted to say thank you also for entrusting us, for example, Randall and Celia, for your medical education. And so with that, I'd like to wish everybody a very good evening. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.